Okay.
Yep, we're all on now.
Yeah. So as you said, Wally, there was a comment last week about fear, and fear as a performance enhancer, I think, was the thing that triggered my attention. I work a lot. I mean, I've been doing this as with a lot of you guys for, over 40 years. And I think fear is, as I tell my clients, fear is the great limiter. And I think that the dimensions that I see, I always ask clients, I say, fear is the great limiter. What is the opposite of fear? And often they say confidence, which is not a bad answer. But I say, to me, the opposite of fear is love. These are the core human emotions, love and fear. And when somebody is performing with love, they're expansive, they're moving into the situation, they're excited about it, they're going for it. When they're performing with fear, they're a little more tentative, they're a little tighter, a little less. Now, it varies. I mean, we could say, in a way, that a degree of fear is what stimulates some people to train hard because they don't want to be caught out. I mean, they're a little bit anxious about not being properly prepared. So in that sense, there is some motivation. But what is really, in my mind, going to sustain them through the training to become exceptional or to become the best they can be is love. It's their passion for the game. It's their passion for the challenge. I mean, I always tell my clients that, if they're playing hockey, you've chosen something very challenging, physically, mentally, it's very challenging. You have to make quick decisions. You have to be brave. Physically, you have to be strong. You have to have endurance. You have to be fast. It's very challenging. Either you love the challenge and you embrace it and you move into it, or you fear the challenge and you're cautious. So I see fear as one of the great limiters. Now, different personalities are different. They have a different tolerance for fear. For example, I think if you compare introverts and extroverts, if there's uncertainty, extroverts move into the uncertainty. If there's uncertainty, introverts stay back a little bit from the uncertainty. So if we talk about uncertainty as a degree of fear or anxiety, again, we see different people, different athletes, different people react to fear differently. But I think one of the things to really understand is how can we help athletes, how can we help our players transform fear into love? What do you do? I say to my clients, what can you do if you're feeling super anxious to change that feeling? And to me, it comes down to working with them to create the right focus, the right feeling, and the right attitude. And by the right focus, I'm working with them always to talk positively to themselves. And, it's one of the simplest exercises I give athletes is to get up in the morning, you're brushing your teeth, you look in the mirror, you make eye contact, and you say to yourself, I'm a good player. And you list 2 or 3 of the reasons why you're good. And if you're becoming a good player, you're saying that, I'm becoming a good player. I'm becoming a better player. It's talking to yourself in a positive way. And, one of the examples I give, every year I have maybe 3, 4 guys who get invited to NHL camp for the first time. And some of them walk into camp and they start looking around and they go like, wow, that guy's big and that guy's fast and he's the number 1 pick. And I say, as soon as you do that, you give your power away. Why were you invited? You were invited because you're a good player. People, an antidote to being anxious is knowing who you are, knowing your strength. And in a way, fear is a separation from your real sense of self. And I'm not sure about myself, I'm become fearful. So talking to yourself in a positive way, visualizing yourself performing well, seeing yourself doing the things you do, working with visualization, working with mental rehearsal, seeing yourself playing well. And then I think probably the key technique that I have working with clients relates to breathing. Just working with clients on breathing, just getting a nice, smooth breathing rhythm. And again, when we're anxious, when we're fearful, we cut down our breathing. And I do this breathing exercise, and I say to them, very simple, has 3 parts. The first part is just to experience the rhythm of the breath. Nice, smooth breathing rhythm. And then I ask them to put a hand on their chest or to put a hand between their chest and their abdomen. And just notice that as they breathe in, the abdomen, the chest rise and fall. And that the breath is like waves in the ocean. And they can always find the waves, and the waves will help them to be more calm and strong. So you're working with positive thought, you're working with positive imagery, you're working with this breathing exercise. The other thing about breathing is it keeps us in the present. When people worry, which makes them anxious, it's because they're thinking about the future. And when they get frustrated or disappointed, they're thinking about the past. And the easiest way to be in the present is this breath. So working with them to focus on positive self-talk, working with creating good feelings, really helps them to have a little more handle on moderating the intensity of that performance demands. And one of the other things I always ask them, any sport, is to pick an animal that gives you the feelings you'd want to have if you were playing great. And with elite athletes, not little kids, because little kids picked all kinds of crazy animals. But if I'm talking to elite athletes, 98% of them are picking predators. They're picking the big cats, they're picking wolves, they're picking bears, they're picking eagles, they're picking predators. And I say, let's say we're talking about a defenseman. And I say, what's the difference between the defenseman who's a predator and the defenseman who's the prey? And of course, the predator steps on the ice to make something happen, and the prey is like tentative. The prey is careful. I had a guy yesterday, a client of mine in the NHL, and he's a wolf. That's his animal. And he's playing like a deer because he's worried about what the coaches think. He's careful, tentative. He doesn't want to make a mistake. Wolves don't worry about what the coaches think. Hunters, they're hunting the puck. I said to him, if we put a hamburger between you and a wolf, who would get the hamburger? Of course, the wolf. I said, if you're the wolf and there's a puck between you and another guy, it's your puck. If you play like it's your puck, they're not 50-50s, they're 60-40s or 70-30s. So it's working with people to get them out of being too cautious, too tentative, afraid of making a mistake. And again, I think fear is the great limiter. And it's really, as I said earlier, fear represents a separation from my true self. Because when I'm feeling good about my true self, I step into the situation and perform. So those are some simple off-the-top ideas, and I'd love to hear comments or response to that. Wally, I don't hear you.
Sammy, I'm just going to ask Sammy, Joe, I mean, our sporting world and the sports psych work we're familiar with related to men and men's sports. What Saul has talked about in your experience with your daughters working with professional women's hockey and fear, and what Saul said, does it connect with your needs and those issues on the female side?
Well, hi, Doctor. Good to see you again. I really connect with what you have to say because I think I was that athlete, and I was that athlete that wanted that and had that drive. And, I've heard you speak numerous times. Now working in minor hockey and having kids that don't necessarily have that drive. I have a daughter who's happy and joyous and loves playing at the park, but isn't necessarily the one that wants to be first to the puck or wants to be first to anything. And the majority, I would say half of the kids that I coach at the house league level are kind of like that. You know, you just want to like give them joy and give them that first entry into sport in general, whatever sport that is. And teaching that ability to want it. That's where I struggle, because I'm not sure, like my daughter says, why do you always want to be first, mommy? And I said, I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't, maybe it's me. Maybe it's not them. You know, maybe it is simply about moving your body and having this joy that comes with sport. And so, yeah, I guess that's not necessarily a question. It's, you know, a statement for all of those others that don't want to be the best and not being okay. And how do we come to terms with that?
Well, wait a sec. I mean, I'm not saying, my job isn't really to motivate people, though I do that.
You certainly do that.
My job is really to help people perform at their best, and I think to perform without fear. So if I'm talking to a group of house league athletes, it's harder to get messages across than it is if I'm talking to a team in the Western Hockey League. Because,
right, so that's the most of the kids I coach now, and they don't have the same mentality as me. So do you have any suggestions, I guess?
Yeah, the thing I think we want to be telling them is to enjoy playing and to enjoy themselves. And that's why, again, I say, are you a good player? Are you becoming a good player? I like to play. Give them some 3 or 4 thoughts, or encourage them to create 3 or 4 positive thoughts about themselves or about playing the game, and work with the breathing stuff is perfect. You know, some of these kids come out and they're a little bit tentative. Just breathe, you know, feel energy coming in and flowing through you. I mean, I think fear is what was really the subject here. Fear is the great limiter, whether it's kids just playing pond hockey or if it's guys playing in the NHL. So how do we alleviate that? Again, positive self-talk, saying to themselves, and really helping them to create good feelings. When they are frightened, it's like they are disconnected from their true self. So I sometimes say to athletes, you know, when I have them look in the mirror every day and say, I'm a good player, and these are elite players I'm working with most of the time. But even with them, sometimes I say, are you a good person? And most of them say, yeah. And I say, why are you a good person? And the number one thing they always say is, because I'm nice to people. I say, good, okay, what else? And they say, that's the first one that gets stuck. I said, do you work hard at things that are important to you? And they say, yeah. Are you honest most of the time? Yeah. I say, okay, maybe every 2 weeks, look in the mirror, make eye contact and say, I'm a good person. You know, it's learning to talk to yourself in a positive way. So, I mean, I think have some responsibility as coaches to help people feel good about themselves. I even give some athletes, not guys in the NHL, but some athletes, this Louise Hay exercise, where I say, look in the mirror, make eye contact, and say to yourself, in your case, Sammy, you'd look in the mirror and you'd say, Sammy, I love you. I really, really love you. I mean, you know, it's just helping people to feel good about themselves so they can express themselves at whatever they do. And again, fear, you know, not wanting to make a mistake, not wanting to be caught out, not wanting to be not okay, is the great limiter. So learning to talk to yourself in a positive way, to see yourself doing simple things you like to do.
I think that's so incredibly valuable for us as coaches too, to know that we are imparting the information that we need to impart in these children, and that isn't always about that next rep team. It isn't always about them making something or doing something. It's about them as people. And have we encouraged them to bring out their better self, really, at the end of the day?
Yeah, their good self, just like
yeah. So I think we as coaches maybe need to have that positive self-talk with ourselves too, to know that we are doing the right thing.
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I'd like to interject relative to Sammy's thoughts on kids. They get out there to begin playing fear, and they're playing a sport where it's competitive in time. Initially, they're just learning to skate, learning to play. Now you reach the stage of compete. And I think the biggest fear is contact, falling down, getting hurt, learning how to do that, and cooperative contact in terms of feeling okay about the physicality and control of your body, and actually enjoying contact and making it humorous, celebrating it with children. So there are progressions in contact confidence and tag games and whatnot to develop the skills to overcome the anxiety of their physical confidence in themselves to be strong enough to go in those situations physically and enjoy them mentally with one another, especially teammates, before you get into competitive games at higher levels where it gets a little Yankee. But I think the right start relative to Saul's talk, I mean, I've seen a great motivational video of a 6-year-old girl standing in front of a mirror talking about herself and believing in herself. And that is what Saul talked about. Now, when they get on the ice or get in a competitive team environment, whether it's one-on-one or whatever, that confidence in self will be even greater with physical literacy, physical competence. But I think the art of coaching at that age is being able to teach, make it comfortable, and make it fun. But there is a point when you go up the competitive ladder where there are lines that are crossed in terms of physicality and safety and intimidation, and fear become a part of that side of the game with young players. And I'm talking here related to the U13s that Tom coached last year and the U15s this year. I mean, I've been shocked at the U13s, the size difference of the girls, and I've had to go to benches to remind them how to check stick on puck, not body, because they don't know how to distinguish the difference. But we've had some serious injuries, stretcher jobs with 15-year-old girls being taken off the ice, games being called off. So it is a serious thing, Saul. And I find girls at that age, Sammy, they don't play with fear. At the competitive so-called that age group, elite hockey, I don't see them throwing snow and being afraid to go in the corner. And Tom could speak to that because he's coaching U15s. He has a small team. And I don't think there's anybody there that's fearful of their environment.
But Wally, those are you're talking the rep kids. Probably the fearful kids are the ones that are left in house league.
Okay. All right.
That's my thought. But
Yep, you're right.
But I think worked with NHL players who were tough guys, and some of the tough guys had some anxiety about fighting. And they were tough guys. I mean, you know, I'm not going to say who they were, or who they are. I'll tell you one, they were not Tiger Williams. The Tiger was not one of them.
that must be tough, because those men are put into environments they don't necessarily even want to be in. That's just how they got to make their living.
Part of them wants to be there, but then you know, they want to play and they want, you know, and they are tough, but they become the league has improved in that regard. I mean, in the old days, it was really, you know, if you were the tough guy on this team. You knew there was a pretty good chance you're going to be fighting that other guy. And but I think even, you know, your rep girls, I mean, I haven't worked really with women's hockey. I worked with the Canadian women's soccer team, our national team, and these are very elite players, and some of them are playing with fear. I mean, they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to let the team down. It wasn't so much a physical fear. It was just fear of screwing up, you know? And maybe one of the reasons Christine Sinclair was so great was she didn't have fear. She could play in, you know, she could be calm with the ball in a scoring situation. But she was unique in that regard. Or maybe not unique, but she was exemplary.
Exceptional.
Yeah.
Mike Benelli, out there in your environment, can you chime in on some of your thoughts and concerns?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it goes to a lot of stuff we've discussed on here too. That I think this fear, and Saul, maybe you can, you know, maybe add to it based off of your most recent experience. That I think for the youngest kids now that are in this like social media world, that fear even becomes even greater, right? Because like when I was growing up, I didn't know somebody was better than me. I just assumed I was really good, so I had a lot less fear about like being compared to other players. But right now, the kids are comparing themselves to each other daily, like every single day. Even the pros, right? I've worked with a lot of NCAA guys right now, and BCHL kids, and you know, kids that are looking to go pro, and they see, you know, the joke is, hey, if you're not on Instagram weightlifting, you're not weightlifting, right? Or if you're not posting that you're training, you're really not training. And I just don't buy that. I think it's a really hard, I think, mantle to live up to. You know, when you add the piece of fear in there, and you know, and I think to Sammy Joe's point with the youth hockey kids that I work with, you know, it is actually, you know, very, very uplifting to me when I watch the house league kid or the rec kid not having any fear because they're just having fun. Like they have no idea. Like I know my own younger son plays. He has no idea there's AAA hockey. He has no idea there's elite hockey. He doesn't know that 10-year-olds go to Quebec and play hockey from New York. He has no idea. So I think it's like, so I think that adding in the, you know, when a player is unduly educated, I guess, by maybe mom or dad, we add to that fear. Like I don't have to tell my kids there's AAA hockey. They only know that because I'm telling them that. And I think but I think social media and the access to other players, the access to, you know, this, I know down here, you know, we have AAA elite 2014 year bursts, a 2015 year bursts, and 2016 year bursts. I mean, these are legitimate recruitment opportunities for our, you know, for our location. And I think that adds so much fear and anxiety that's just not needed.
Yeah, I can't disagree. As I was using the example before of having a couple of players who, you know, every year go to NHL camp for the first time, and they look around, and when they start comparing themselves to others, it starts to create some problems. And I said, why were you invited? You're invited because you're a good player. Focus on your game. Focus on your strength. Talk positively to yourself. Do the breathing. Create the good feelings in you. You're responsible. But it comes about when I'm worried what the coach is thinking. I'm worried what these people are thinking. And it's a lack of self-love in a way. And I think as coaches, it's interesting, again, because I'm working mostly, well, almost exclusively with elite athletes. And there is a push there to be the best you can be and to excel. So there is a pressure there. And the pressure certainly predisposes some people to more fear. It's different at an earlier development league. And I know when I wrote Hockey Tough, I wanted to include an epilogue about the difference between coaching kids and coaching elite elite athletes. And the publisher really didn't want it. No, just write the book about, the different elements to be successful. And I said, no, we got to have that, because there are coaches who are coaching 10 and 12-year-olds who think that they're coaching in the NHL. And they put a tremendous amount of pressure on kids, and they destroy the joy that kids have playing. And Bobby Orr made some good comments when I was writing the book about, just how he said, I don't know if I would have become the player I had, something to that effect. If I grew up with that kind of coaching. I just went out on the ice and, it wasn't, I think, Lake Erie or something, wherever he was, and, skated on the ice out there and had fun, and we played for hours and hours, and that's how you develop this great love of the game. Yeah. So, with young kids, we really should be encouraging them that it's great that you're out playing. It's really, let's have some fun. And it's important, because kids will sometimes say things to other kids that cause people not to feel good about themselves. My son was a very good baseball player, and I coached Little League. I coached more than that, but I coached Little League. And we'd have a situation where Joey would be coming up to the plate, and some kid on the bench would say, "Hey, Joey, don't strike out." I'd say, "Wait a minute. Why did you just say that?" And he'd say, "Because I want to get up." And I said, "Well, if you want to get up, you say, 'Hey, Joey, get a hit.' If anybody here says, 'Joey, don't strike out,' they're going to be sitting on the bench. They're going to be out of the game." And in a short time, some of these kids learned a little bit more how to talk to each other. So as coaches, we have that responsibility too, to be able to say, "Hey, we say good things to each other in the room." If a guy doesn't, maybe he didn't do it, but we say, good try. That's for little kids developing a sense of playing with each other. That's not at the highest level.
Mike Benelli.
Yeah, you're just triggering. So when I was laughing, I was coaching with this one dad, and we were trying to help each other a little bit at the with the 10-year-olds, and I'll never forget, and watching the kid's face and really understanding this about any kind of human emotion, right? That we had lost the game something like 10-1 on a Saturday, and it was horrible. The kids are crying and everybody's upset. The parents are all quitting the team, the whole thing. And the first thing he does on Sunday, and we were missing like 3 or 4 players. So now on Sunday we have the 3 or 4 players back. All the 10 players are back in the locker room. He's like, if for nothing else, don't remember how bad the loss was yesterday. Let's not dwell on yesterday's beatdown. And all the kids are like, what happened yesterday? And then the kids start crying again. They're upset. So I'm just laughing how, that just that verbiage and how you go into a room with, well, any person, but for 10 and 11-year-olds that have probably beaten themselves up, for at least the 10 minutes after a game, they've forgotten it. They've forgotten all about that game yesterday.
And that's also really great advice with a partner too.
Right.
Don't say that to your husband or wife either. Don't.
Yeah. You just come in and go, "Hey, remember yesterday how bad that was? Let's not start there."
How terrible it was.
So, but I laugh about the kid getting up to the plate. It's the same thing. It's like, don't screw up. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you tell me, hey, go out and get a hit, or let's go out and have your best at bat, or hey, help the team out here. Not, oh, I hope you don't fail, because then it's going to be all on you. And my son plays lacrosse goalie in high school, and it's so funny how you can trigger a player's mental state as they're walking into the net just by one sentence that you can make. And hey, I hope you make some good saves here today so we can stay in the game. I'm like, well, thanks a lot. Why don't you score some goals? Crazy.
We had a sports psych that right before the World Championship, as I'm walking off of the warm up, to go into the dressing room before the final game, and I'm the starting goalie, and he says to me, "Are you nervous before the big game today?"